court to order. So good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Jason Lane. I am very, very happy to be the board president for Mayoral, Missouri. And I just wanted to personally welcome everyone here today. I've kind of mentioned this to a few people. It seems like every time, no matter when we have this thing, it's always a damp day. Either it's hot as heck outside and we walk in sweaty, or else it's raining. So I think next time we're going to plan on having a wet annual meeting, and then I think Paul brought this up, maybe it'll be a dry one. So I just again wanted to welcome everyone here. We're really glad to see everybody turn out that we did. And I'm going to turn it over to Pamela. So for those, if you've not had a chance to talk to Pamela, she's pretty big special for us. So we're really proud to have her. And she does a really great job. So everyone, Pamela Summers.
Well, I just want to say, perish the day when we have an actual dry annual meeting. I'm not sure you'd attend. I want to thank our board of directors for always being such a constant source of support and inspiration. They did a study at our national office recently, and they said that the single biggest factor in retaining executive directors over a long period of time was the strength of the board and the volunteers. So I've been here now almost 8 years. They've been dog years, but I've loved every minute of it. And I want to thank our interns for helping with all of this, and our staff. Many of you know Vanessa. She's been with us almost a year now. She was giving you your name tags. And I'm very pleased to tell you that Stephanie Budrus, who has been with us for 3 out of 4 summers in college and through this entire school year, is going to be joining our staff for First Days Monday. And I am hoping to structure a planned giving program so that we can have a fellow like Stephanie every single year, perhaps a renewable fellowship, or at least one-year fellowships named in honor of our dear friend Cohen. That I think would be an appropriate way to remember her. I hope that everybody did fill out their ballot slips. Our intrepid interns, employed otherwise by Price Waterhouse, will tally these results with actuarial certitude. And I'd like to thank our state officials who have joined us today. Representative Bill Otto, Representative Courtney Curtis, Representative Janice Monticello, and Representative Sue Meredith. Did I miss any current state reps? And we also have with us former State Representative Joanne Carl and former State Representative Jane Bughetto. Jane is a real glutton for punishment, as she also serves on our board. It's a real honor and privilege for us to have with us today a young woman of extreme courage and fortitude. I do not know how many 17-year-old people would stand up to their high school principal on moral grounds and endure the threats of somebody who, in my judgment, should not be an educator if that's the way, the sort of disrespect that this person chooses to deal out to students. As a former ACLU lawyer, I just have a feeling you're going to be joining our ranks shortly. All of my interns can tell you that I generally try to discourage people from going to law school. I'll make an exception in your case. Caitlin Campbell, please come address us.
So I guess you guys have heard about how much trouble you can get in for sending a couple emails. I guess as Pamela said, my name is Caitlin Campbell, and I just graduated from George Washington High School in Charleston, West Virginia. And I'll be attending Wellesley College, much to the chagrin of George Allenbacher, my principal, in the fall. So I guess, I'm sure you guys have heard sort of the bits and pieces about my story that have come out in the media, so I thought I'd just sort of open up with giving it to you from my perspective. So I guess last year around this time, I was elected student body vice president of GW, my high school, which to me was a really big deal. I always have thought on student council, and I've been a member for 3 years, that it was important that I represent my class when I was a class officer, and this past year, the student body. So when Pam Senzel came to my school, I was really upset. My student council advisor, Karen Donathan, called me the night before the assembly and said, "Look, Caitlin, I think you're going to find this really interesting." And she read me an excerpt from a flyer that was handed out to teachers at a teacher meeting the day before the assembly. And the one that really caught my eye was when it mentioned Pam would be talking about God's plan for sexual purity. And I go to public school, so it's like, this is a plan I'd like to hear about. So at that point, I knew, I don't really want to go to this. I don't think it's appropriate. So I started spreading the word via Twitter and Facebook. It's generally that's what I do when something goes wrong. Like, look, Pam Senzel's coming to school. Check this out of your own accord. I don't really think it's something worth listening to. So I didn't end up actually going to the assembly. I sat in one of the rooms at school that was luckily not checked. There were a lot of classrooms where vice principals went around to make sure no students were in the classroom, and if there were students, they were forced to go into the assembly. Anyone who arrived late was forced to go into the assembly. So by that token, it was mandatory. There's been a lot of debate, I guess, on the internet, she didn't go, it wasn't mandatory. Well, I was fortunate enough to be well hidden, I guess. So I was looking at Twitter, and I started noticing people tweeting things that Pam was saying. One of the most notable was, if your mother gives you birth control, then she probably hates you. And my mom gives me birth control, and I'm pretty sure she loves me, so I don't really think that's true. So at this point, I was pretty ticked off. I really didn't want Pam Senzel to come to my school. She was obviously religiously motivated, and really was speaking a lot of things that weren't truth. And I mean, just in common terms, if you have hand-to-genital contact with another person, that isn't sex. According to Pam, it is. And don't you dare call yourself a virgin, and have fun explaining to your husband how you aren't a virgin because someone molested you as a child and touched your genitals. So at that point, I'm really angry, and then I heard that students were crying and students were upset. So at that point, I called the newspaper, and I wrote an email to the newspaper, and I wrote an email to the ACLU saying, look, this is what's happening. It isn't correct. And then I went home, I went about my business, and then the next day I was called into Mr. Allenbacher, my principal's office, out of my Anat Phys 2 class, which is basically like a pre-med, sciencey type thing. We were learning how to intubate people that day, which is an adventure, and I suggest you all try it because, in the event of a disaster, I could put a tube down your throat and oxygenate you, which would be awesome. So I walked into Mr. Allenbacher's office. I knew basically what he was going to talk to me about. He said, I just got off the phone with a reporter. I'm really disappointed in you. And I said, Mr. Allenbacher, what's wrong? I don't understand. And he said, how dare you contact the paper without telling me? I said, really, it's my prerogative if I want to contact the paper. He said, and then I sat down and I got in his office. He said, how would you feel if I called your college and told them what a backstabber you are and what bad character you have? And I said, go ahead, because I'm going to a women's college. I mean, I think they're pretty liberal on a lot of but again, I'm sure everybody's been in a situation, be it with their parents or with a boss or someone, they just keep drilling you. And that's what Mr. Allenbacher did. It's been his policy at GW basically to scare people until they're afraid to speak out. One of my English teachers, which he has a really interesting story, I won't go into too much of the details, but basically he was educated and worked at Bob Jones University, but until he came out as gay. And then he started a group called BJ Unity, which is for the gay students at Bob Jones who are afraid to come out because of the stance of the administration. He's basically been bullied by Mr. Allenbacher into going to a different school. So I kind of had the idea when I walked in there that this was going to be the case. But he went off on this tirade, you're the only one who has a problem with this. I've gotten texts from parents saying, this has prompted some great discussion with my child. I thought, this has prompted some great discussion with my mom about how crazy he is. And that's what really got me and what made me cry in his office. I'm not a huge crier. I'm not particularly emotional. I take my professional life very professionally, and what's personal is personal. But he really made me feel like I was by myself. But then I told him, even if I am the only person who's complaining, it's my right to do so, and you have no right to infringe upon me. And it went on like that for about 15 minutes. I finally just said, I don't have to sit here and listen to this. And I got up and left his office. And then I got a call from Sherry Callahan, who is the most recent wife of Mike Callahan, who ran for Senate in West Virginia, super liberal, was head of the Democratic Party in West Virginia. And I told her what happened, and she worked with an organization that works to implement reproductive health education comprehensively in school. It's called West Virginia Free. She said, we can help you. So I was muddled down in the press stuff. I had all these people calling me, so I agreed to let her help out, and that's how I got here. And one of the things that, I guess, segued that was appearing on CNN, which that was absolutely terrifying. They sat me in this little room in this kind of sketchy-looking building on Spring Street in Charleston, which is in Westmoreland, which is kind of rougher part of Charleston. And you're looking in this camera, and you can't see who's talking to you, and the little earbud in your ear is constantly falling out, and you're trying not to jerk as you're putting the earbud back in your ear on national television. And then after the fact, I found out that there was a 4-minute delay. So I was like, man, I look really smart. But then after that, I guess that's when I started working with Mike, who was my lawyer, and I held a press conference the next day and announced that I was going to file an injunction against my principal. And for a lot of people in Charleston, that meant that I was going to have him fired and have the court do it, when really the injunction was just to protect me from any future discrimination. So of course, the entire team of football moms and all the football players pack out the courtroom, because every court setting is a football game. And like they did at the Board of Education meeting the week before, where people were actually screaming. And one of my friends, during her speech in my defense and in defense of actual statistics, was sort of forced out of the room because they were so rude to her. So having this injunction hearing, one of the things that I was most concerned about was being able to speak at graduation. And Mr. Allenbacher even testified to the fact that what he said to me was true, and that I wasn't just making up false allegations, but it was an analogy. He meant that, I guess according to him, he meant that I'd gone behind his back, so how would I feel if he went behind mine? So on that basis, I wasn't granted the injunction, not because the judge didn't believe that he threatened me, but because I didn't have any evidence of future harm, which really probably was a mistake on his part, because a couple weeks, I guess 2 weeks after the injunction hearing, I was called into his office again with a group of other highest honor grads, and we were told that we weren't going to be allowed to speak at graduation. We've been told all year, I've been told multiple times that I was going to be allowed to speak. All of us had submitted speeches for approval weeks before and been told that they were kosher. It's always been the tradition at GW that any highest honor grad, that's someone who has a 4.5 cumulative GPA or higher, will be allowed to speak at graduation. He made the hasty decision a week before that we would only have the top 2 speak, of which I'm not included. So we fought the battle in the press again. We ended up losing again, and none of us were allowed to speak at graduation. But on that note, we had a really brave salutatorian, who's a good friend of mine, Maria Tayyib, and she included sort of the keynote of everyone's speech in her speech. Yeah, go Maria. She's the best. But so on that note, that's kind of the whole story, how it's played out. Basically this summer I've been laying in bed watching a lot of Netflix and answering a bunch of emails, which is really relaxing. But really this entire situation was spearheaded by just someone in power abusing that power. And Mr. Allenbacher would have continued to abuse his power had I not sent those 2 emails, and had I not stomached my fear of talking on the phone and listened to reporters who called me and done interviews with the New York Times and with whoever else has contacted me. There was a period of time, the first week or 2 after, where I was taking 4 phone calls a day during my lunch break. That was kind of stressful. But that's where the root of grassroots activism comes in, is really just seeing a problem and not being afraid to say something about it. And seeing someone who really is a bigot and has this idea in his head that he's in control of everything, and doing something about it. Mr. Allenbacher, I can go on for days, but when you have the police called on your senior fun day and a student is held at gunpoint because we were throwing water balloons or planning to throw water balloons, you know it's getting out of hand. So I guess in that respect, this story is still playing out in terms of what will happen to Mr. Allenbacher. It's rumored that he won't be at GW next year, but I guess, yeah, but I guess in that respect, that's my message to you is don't be afraid to stick out about an issue, even, especially I guess since I'm here for NARAL in terms of abortion rights. And if you see a problem, fix it, because it's easy to do. The media will listen to you. It's a matter of just coming across as educated and like you really know what you're talking about and being passionate. So it's that combination that really has made what I've done successful and has made other initiatives successful. And it's the conservatives are coming in all across the nation. There's a guy from NPR named Trey Kay who did a radio documentary on the textbook wars in Kanawha County a couple years ago, who I'm working on a radio documentary with right now. And he's doing a piece on my situation paired with one in Red Hook, where he's from, in New York, about how people are teaching sex ed and like gay-straight relations in schools. And the backlash is everywhere, but we need to look for a more moderate, scientific view of sex ed and of gay-straight relations and pretty much any controversial issue in order to, I guess, progress in a way that makes sense. So I guess if you guys have any questions for me, I've given my spiel.
Can we clone you?
Clone me? I don't know, man. That's a controversial issue. Take a stance on that.
When you said you contacted the newspaper, were you referring to the school newspaper or the community paper?
I contacted the Charleston Gazette, which is the big paper in West Virginia, but then I got calls from the Daily Mail, which is the more local, it's actually a pretty conservative paper right after that.
Did the principal call Wesley actually in the end, or no?
I don't think he did. I think, because shortly after it came out in the media that he decided he was going to call Wellesley and tell them what a terrible person I am, they tweeted at me and posted on Facebook, like, Caitlin, don't worry about it. We welcome you with open arms, which was,
Wow.
that was nice. I really, I think I've been at the right place.
I wish there were more time for questions, but we have got to get Caitlin and Melinda to the airport. Everybody is welcome to stay and socialize. And I just want to thank you so much. And Melinda, I want to thank you for raising such a terrific daughter. I hope I did for a reason usually. And I'm just so proud of you. Keep in touch with us, and you know, I'm going to send my kid to Wellesley now. I'm just saying.